Good day. Martin Pytela here, health coach at Life Enthusiast. You find me at life-enthusiast.com. What mask do you recommend for adults or for kids? Well, if you are in an immediate situation, like where you're dusty, right? Like if you're working in an industrial situation where you are, I don't know, what shall we imagine? Grinding something, or people who work in construction dealing with gyprock and that sort of thing. That you need to have industrial protection. Well, okay, I understand the question now. Peggy's saying that she's in an environment where the ashes are falling out of the sky, raining upon us. Yep. Well, the good old N95 mask, if you can get your hands on that, it's going to stop a lot of things, which is great. Wear that. Just even just a t-shirt or a shirt over your nose is better than nothing. You want to stop as much of it as possible. The finer the filter, the better. Right? Like for an absolute serious exposure, you would want to be wearing the mask that has, those two buckets that sit on the side with filters and all of that. That's usually not a possibility. However, accept the fact that some of the stuff, especially the smallest particles, will get in. So do not go running outside while the ashes are falling or while the smoke is in the air around you. Because when you are breathing like this, when you're running, exercising hard, you're bypassing the filter that your body has in your nose. You're just sucking it all in. So don't be exercising outdoors. And the other thing that's worth doing is definitely wearing the mask. And then we do have something called Alvectin. It's a supplement, Alvectin. After this thing is over, you want to take Alvectin to make sure that you help to facilitate the emulsification of these particles so that they can come out of the alveoli. In your lungs, it's the pipe, right? There's the trachea and then bronchi, and it's sort of like tree branches getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And finally, at the end, it's like leaves, and they are the alveoli, tiny little pockets, so sort of like little caves. And that's where the actual exchanges between the red blood cells and the air start taking place. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. The exchanges keep happening. So the alveoli are not protected by the mucus. Like here at the top, we have mucus available that stops a lot of things, traps things, right? And that's what we cough out. This action is pushing up mucus, and there are these toxic things trapped in the mucus. So coughing is a good thing from the perspective of getting rid of stuff. Not that it's enjoyable, it's not. Anyway, the Alvectin will help remove the smallest of particles that got in that the body's natural defenses are having trouble with. And the other product that we have is called Albidextrin. That's Albedextrin. And Albidextrin is a tertiary detoxifier. We have level 1, level 2, level 3 toxicity. So for the industrial toxins, I would be trying to protect the microbiome in the gut. For that, I will take humic acid and fulvic acid. I want to bind the heavy metals that are carried into the body. And that I will deal with zeolite. Zeolite is an excellent binder that will help to transport out of the body electropositive things. So that would be the forever chemicals, like the plastics and so on, the Teflon, the perfluorocarbons, and the water solubles, and all that stuff that should not be in the body. Actually, I want to show you. I have this thing here. This is the product called Masterpiece, and that's a combination of zeolite made liquid and marine plasma and some vibrational qualities added to it. And this thing is quite great, and it's just a simple clear liquid, 5 drops of it once a day for maintenance, twice a day for active duty. Not a whole lot. This bottle should last you 2 months. That's very helpful. Now, if you have a large amount of toxicity, you want to take zeolite in volume, and we have it available. Zeolite AV in capsules or zeolite pure in powder. All of that is binder in volume, in quantity. So you may only need it for, 1 bottle of it or 2 bottles of it, and that's enough to get the problem under control. The liquid stuff is easy because it's easily administered to children. It doesn't taste like anything, slightly salty, and it's no trouble. So anyway, I really recommend zeolite, humic, and this marine plasma. All good stuff to remove the industrial toxins that get into the body. The albidextrin that I started talking about is capable of dealing with the after effects of the toxicity. So that's also a good thing. Again, you don't need to do it for a long time, just long enough to bind, to deal with the damage. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the philosophy of it. I've done a lot of thinking about what's happening and why it's happening and all of that. Thinking about the narratives, the well-meaning, good-hearted people who have brought to us meddling. It's almost 50 years when I first got my health insurance and dental coverage and stepped into the dentist's office. And their first question was, do you have dental coverage, insurance? I thought it was a great thing. It turns out no, because a lot of things that are done are not done because they're needed or important or the best choice, but because they're covered by insurance. So I'm thinking now about the fire insurance industry in California. Just recently, I saw a headline that 1,636 fire insurance policies were canceled in the last 6 months in Pacific Palisades. So I'm visualizing people that have lived there for a long time. For 30 years, they have paid into the fire insurance. They have paid it every year. And last year, it got canceled. And this year, their house burned. So people are up in arms about the insurance companies. The insurance companies, they exited the industry, they exited the area, they gave up, and they left us high and dry. It's the insurance company's fault. I got to thinking about that. The insurance company their business is to insure losses, but at the same time, their business also is to not go bankrupt. And in a normal, competitive environment, things work well. And it's the do-gooders, especially the politicians, who try to protect the innocent instead of allowing the natural forces of the market to take care of things. They set up regulations. So, for example, in California, they regulated the insurance company or the insurance industry in such a way that the insurance companies could not raise the rate to what it was needed to be in order to cover the risk. So to explain, right? Let's just say that you have a home in Pacific Palisades, for example. The average home is about $4.5 million. The range is somewhere from 1.5 to 60 or something like that. But the average is 4.5. And I think the median, which is the middle of the pack, is more like 6. So that's just the value of the land and house on top of it. And houses there are big, right? And through, again, regulation and inflation and who knows what else, the cost of building a house in Pacific Palisades is somewhere around $1,000 a square foot if you're building a luxurious way, right? Which they are. So let's just say that you have a house that's 5,000 square feet, not even the typical 7,000 square feet that they have there. They tend to be biggish, but let's just say 5,000 square feet, and your replacement cost will be $1,000 a square foot. That is $5 million to build that house back. So the insurance industry looks at that and sees that there is an event. Let's just say that a firestorm comes through once every 1,000 years. So you should theoretically have that $5 million and divided by 1,000 years, and that should be your annual cost. So that should be $5,000 for fire insurance for that house for a year. Now change the equation, change the event once every 20 years, which is what's happening now. It's almost a sure thing that something will burn. So if you have to replace that house every 20 years, now you have to take 5%, 100 divided by 20, 5% of the house replacement cost, and you need to collect that in insurance. So what's that? 5% of 5 million, so 10% would be 500,000. Half of that would be 250,000. That would be the insurance policy price for that house every year, 250,000. That would be the natural way of things. So who can afford that, right? How can you pay $250,000 every year for a house there? So what do we see? What do we see? What happened? How did we get here? So we have these do-gooders managing the water resources, and they're protecting something, some environmental idea, while not filling water reservoirs. So all of a sudden you have not enough water to do the firefighting. It's an interesting thing. Pacific Palisades burned in 1961. You may remember that, or you can look it up. Zsa Zsa Gabor's house went up in flames back in 61 in Pacific Palisades. And a lot of changes were made. Building a house with cedar shake roof is a bad idea. Building the house with siding that can burn is a bad idea. And I mean, there are all kinds of things. Up in Canada, where I am, a lot of stuff was learned. Like, for example, a town of Logan Lake, not far from where I was, didn't burn despite the fact that everything around it, and it's a small town in the middle of the forest, it should have burned to the ground. It didn't, because their mayor had good ideas and said, everything's burning all around us. Why don't we take precautions? And they did 3 things. They cleared the perimeter of the town. They created a buffer. Then they made sure that their roofs were made from materials that don't catch on fire. And that's all of the stuff, because what you'll see is you will see embers, hot pieces of burning wood flying in the air and landing on things and starting fires. So you need to make it difficult for it. So one of the things that they did is they installed roof sprinklers, and they made everything moist and wet. So when the fire came, not a single house was lost. And you will see that in California too, that there will be houses still standing. There are going to be protected areas where people did something smart. Like in Palisades, there's this complex managed by Rick Caruso, who, by the way, ran to be a mayor but didn't get in, whose property, he's a developer. Anyway, his property survived. Not his single house, the entire complex survived. Why? Because they did things right. So we have mismanagement of the insurance industry, where we are not insuring the risk correctly. And that, again, that's politicians interfering in that. We have mismanagement of the construction industry. We have regulations that may or may not make sense and be relevant to what we need to do. And then there's the forest management. It's pretty sad that the dead trees, the fuel for fires, have not been removed. I don't know what the heck happened in California, but if you look at the numbers, 70 years ago, they used to take something like 8 billion board feet of wood out of their forests. And I think they reduced that by 75%. They don't take trees out of the forests. They're leaving them there. It's leaving nature to do its thing. Well, when nature does its thing, it's not compatible with human urban development. There's something really interesting that happened up in Canada. The city of Jasper, that's in Alberta. Canadian Rockies, beautiful stuff. National parks protected. And in the middle of the park is a city of Jasper. And it's all federal land, federally protected, federally managed. And the general idea of the national park was, let's leave nature to do its thing. And then they put a town in the middle of it. And then there was a beetle kill. We have environmental issues, and the winters are not as cold as they used to be. And so the pine beetle survives and kills a lot of trees. And so there were stands of huge stands, acres upon acres of dead trees killed by the beetle. It's dry and it's tinder. So once a fire starts, it really burns. So these federal bureaucrats wanted to leave nature to do its thing. They did not clear, let's just say half a mile or maybe even quarter mile around town. They did not do that. They did not clear the dead trees from around town. So I think 40% or something like that of the town burned to the ground, just lost. Was it 100% preventable? Or how much of a difference would it have made if the bureaucrats listened to the reasonable folks, the practical, the business types, people who actually run things, instead of running things by theory, by decree, instead of running things by ideals and policies, instead of you just get practical. Town of Jasper might have not burned. I don't know the exact extent to which Pacific Palisades could have been saved or could have not burned. But what did we learn? In 2018, there was this huge fire in California. I think it was Sepulveda. It's only 6 years ago. What have we changed based on that huge fire? What did we learn back in the 60s? What have we changed? We didn't. And then we're wondering, right? So what do I see here? Well, I'm thinking, okay, so the people that were there, they lost their houses. There is a limit to how much you get. I think the limit may be $3 million. It is not enough. Or maybe it's $1 million. I don't know the numbers now. But it will not be enough to replace the houses at the current costs. So most people down there will not be able to take the loss. So somebody will have to make up for it. So they'll come to the state government and they'll come to the federal government. So all of us collectively in the United States are now going to be asked to pay for the lifestyle and for the housing stock of people living in coastal California. Now, I don't know what it feels like to a person living in middle of Kansas that they should pay for people's lifestyle in California. But there's something out of balance here, right? Like, it just doesn't feel right that the whole country should compensate folks for living where they're living in a state that they're living in that is mismanaging their local situation because of their policies, because how the people locally are voting, who they bring and put in charge of things. Like, this should be a huge wake-up call. I think, well, the country has made a shift as a whole, where we have gone from managing things by decree and regulation toward practical management style. I think that's a good thing. At least that's where I believe things should be. Anyway, maybe California needs to do some soul searching and figure itself out, because the policies that are not practical are causing a lot of trouble. Pain all around, plenty of it. The individual person, I so feel for them, losing everything that you've got. And this thing came so fast that they probably didn't have time to pack much. So I don't know what clever thing they did. What do people regret the most? I think they regret the most not taking mementos, family pictures, stuff that they inherited through several generations. I was listening to Mel Gibson talking about the house he lost, and he said, yeah, some of the stuff, like, I've collected rare books. There are some books that are going back to 1600s. Yep, that's all gone. Pictures, paintings. I collected art, nice art. That's gone. Yeah. I mean, Mel Gibson's okay. He has more than one house. But the other people that have only one house and one set of memories, all of that's gone. It's painful, traumatizing. So back to trauma, right? When I talk about health, it's always four things. Toxicity, today was a lot about that. Malnutrition, that's an important bit. Stagnation, that's about exercise, movement, lymphatic stuff. And trauma. And trauma is stuff that happens that sets us up for being in trouble emotionally. When we are traumatized, we tend to make incorrect choices or react inappropriately to inputs. It's not what happens, it's what you do with it, right? So I started talking about the conflict zones. Think Gaza, 1.5 years of incessant bombing. And I keep hearing the news asking the Israelis to stop the bombings. And the Israelis are really clear. They say Hamas needs to come out of their holes, give up, and then we stop bombing the next day. And yet I don't hear in the news anybody saying it's time for Hamas to come out of the tunnels that they built with our money that we sent there. Come out of the tunnels, put their hands up, and give up. And if they don't, then the bombings will continue. And it is the regular folk that are not Hamas that are getting bombed. And it's just so sad. Or the Ukrainians, right? The Ukrainians are getting bombed by the Russians. And they're getting bombed by the Russians because the American government has been interfering in the Ukrainian situation since 2004 and 2008 and 2014. And the situation is known if only you want to hear it. And it's us causing this trouble there, and the Ukrainians are suffering for it. And anyway, the number of people who are traumatized by that is in the millions. So now the weather, right? Now the weather here, it's no better, no different than getting bombed. You know, what's the emotional difference between having your apartment building or your house bombed by somebody with a drone or with a missile, or by forest fire? From the perspective of the homeowner, it's no different. This is like war. Anyway, I totally feel for them. And how will we deal with trauma? And that's another whole episode that I could probably set up, and I will talk about dealing with trauma. Right now, for example, we know that the way the psychiatry maybe, divisions of the medical industry are dealing with things are absolutely ineffective. Let's call it that. Just ineffective and hopeless. And the government has regulated plant-based medicine that's very useful for this sort of thing. Regulated onto class 1, which means it's dangerous and has no medical value, should never be researched. Well, I'm hoping to see changes. The new administration is starting in a week. I don't know how fast the changes will come along, but I surely hope that they will be swift and profound. Okay, that should be it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed the talk. This has been Martin Pytela, health coach at Life Enthusiast, life-enthusiast.com. Today's January 12th, 2025. Enjoy your day.